In late October of 1943, a small but telling conflict unfolded within Easy Company, one that would later become known as the Winters-Sobel latrine incident. For years, only fragments of the story were widely known. Recently uncovered documentation helps fill in some of the administrative trail that followed the event. While the papers still don't answer the larger question of whether the episode was part of a deliberate challenge to Captain Herbert Sobel's leadership, they do reveal the official correspondence exchanged between Sobel, Lieutenant Richard D. Winters, and Lieutenant Colonel Robert Strayer. The first document in the chain is dated October 30, 1943. It is titled Punishment under Article of War 104 and is addressed to Lieutenant R. D. Winters. In it, Sobel presents Winters with a formal choice. The letter reads, "You will indicate by endorsement below whether you desire punishment under 104th AW or trial by courts-martial for failure to inspect the latrine at 0945 this date. As instructed by me, it is signed simply, Herbert M. Sobel, Captain Commanding." There's an interesting detail here that fans of dramatizations might recognize differently. In the television series portraying these events, the moment is depicted with Sergeant Evans handing the letter to Winters on the street, while Lewis Nixon jokes that Sobel spelled court-martial incorrectly. The real document tells a slightly different story. The letter was actually delivered at regimental headquarters and in Sobel's presence. The misspelling wasn't court-martial at all. Sobel had written endorsement incorrectly, spelling it with an I. Winters responded the same day. Beneath Sobel's order, he wrote a brief but decisive reply. Captain H. M. Sobel, I request trial by courts-martial for failure to inspect the latrine at 0945 this date. It's difficult to know exactly how to interpret the wording. Winters may have simply repeated Sobel's phrasing while acknowledging the accusation, or he may have been formally contesting the charge by choosing the court-martial option. The wording leaves that question somewhat open. The following day, October 31st, Sobel issued another letter. This one outlined the immediate consequences and the next steps in the process. Winters, he wrote, would be denied a 48-hour pass until after December 15, 1943. Sobel also instructed him to follow the procedures outlined in the court-martial manual by writing his own letter of appeal. In that letter, Winters was to state his objections to the punishment and formally request trial by courts-martial. Unless a superior authority intervened, Sobel wrote, the punishment would stand. It was sometime after this exchange that Lieutenant Colonel Robert Strayer, the battalion commander, transferred Winters out of Easy Company's line leadership role and reassigned him to Headquarters Company as the battalion mess officer. The transfer was temporary, but it removed him from direct service under Sobel while the dispute was still unfolding. On November 4th, Winters drafted the appeal Sobel had instructed him to write. Addressed to the commanding officer of Company E1, the letter formally requested review of the punishment issued under Article of War 104. Winters explained his version of the events from October 30th. According to Winters, he had originally been ordered by Sobel to inspect the latrines at 10 a.m. Earlier that morning, around 9:30, Lieutenant Colonel Strayer had assigned him another supervisory duty that required his attention. Winters stated that he remained engaged in that task until the appointed time, after which he inspected the latrines at 10 o'clock as originally directed. He maintained that he never received any subsequent order moving the inspection time forward to 9:45. Since he was occupied with the assignment from Strayer, he wrote, he had not been available to receive such a change. The next response appears to have been written by Sobel sometime between November 4 and November 11th. In it, Sobel made clear that he had no intention of rescinding the punishment. He rejected Winters' explanation and offered his own version of the events that morning. Sobel claimed that around 9:15 on October 30, he had spoken with Winters by telephone and told him to report at 9:40, along with another officer, Lieutenant Davis. Sobel also noted that Winters had been in his quarters at the time, performing mail censoring duties. According to Sobel, when a superior officer issued a new order that conflicted with a previous assignment, the proper course of action was to delegate the original task to another officer, rather than allow it to go undone. This particular detail introduces an intriguing contradiction. In the television dramatization of these events, Sobel is shown complaining that he did not even have a telephone available. Yet in his own written statement, he specifically references a phone conversation with Winters that morning. If Sobel's account is accurate, It suggests Winters did in fact receive notice of the change in time. That possibility has led some historians and commentators to speculate about Winters' motives. If he knew the time had been moved up and chose not to comply, it might suggest he intentionally forced Sobel into taking formal disciplinary action. Such a move would carry risks, but it could also bring the issue of Sobel's leadership to the attention of higher command, particularly Colonel Robert Sink, who was already aware of tensions within the company. The matter eventually reached the desk of Lieutenant Colonel Strayer. On November 11th, he issued a short but decisive memorandum. In it he wrote that the punishment imposed on Lieutenant R.D. Winters under Article of War 104 was hereby set aside under the authority granted in the court-martial manual. The paperwork, he instructed, was to be returned to the company commander and filed with the case record. That document effectively ended the disciplinary proceedings. The punishment against Winters was nullified. It is worth noting the timing. Strayer's letter was written after the dramatic moment when the non-commissioned officers of Easy Company confronted the chain of command by turning in their stripes in protest of Sobel's leadership. That event dramatically escalated the conflict within the company and forced senior officers to intervene. Yet even after the matter appeared settled, the tension between Sobel and Winters did not immediately disappear. On November 12, Sobel issued another letter accusing Winters of dereliction of duty, once again related to latrine responsibilities. This second charge concerned Winters' alleged failure to properly instruct a private, J. Mello, in his duties as the latrine orderly. Sobel ordered Winters to reply by endorsement, again spelling the word incorrectly, explaining why Private Mello had not been instructed, and why the soldier had been found on duty at 10:30 that morning in need of a shave. Winters responded on November 13th. This time, however, he offered no explanation or defense. In his later memoirs, Winters recalled that by this point he had essentially given up trying to fight Sobel through the paperwork. Exactly when Sobel met with Colonel Sink, or when the final decision was made to transfer Sobel out of Easy Company, isn't clearly documented in the records connected with these letters. The absence of that timeline leaves historians with an incomplete picture of how the situation finally resolved itself. Taken together, the documents paint a strange and tense portrait of a command relationship that had clearly broken down. Sobel's persistence in issuing disciplinary actions, even after the earlier punishment had been overturned, suggests he either believed strongly in his authority or felt compelled to defend it. As for Winters, the documents leave open a lingering question. Did he deliberately ignore Sobel's order in order to provoke a confrontation he believed would ultimately remove Sobel from command? Or was he simply caught between conflicting instructions from two officers on a chaotic training day? Only a handful of people at the time, most notably Winters himself and Colonel Sink, likely knew the full truth behind what happened that morning. The paperwork reveals the steps that followed, but the motivations behind them remain part of the enduring mysteries surrounding Easy Company's early history.